Hello, this is the second video on Microsoft Excel. This is just a basic overview of Excel for people who maybe have not used Excel before. Just going to go over some of the basic features. So I've already opened Excel and I've clicked on New. The first thing you're going to see is that Excel has a lot of different templates that you can use. These are time savers. So if you have a general idea of what you need in your project and you want to, sort of not reinvent the wheel again, but use somebody else's work so that you can expedite your development. Excel has a lot of different templates here. Now this is just a sampling of those templates. It's not all of them. So if you know specifically what you're looking for, let's say you're looking for a budget template, you can just type in the keyword there and you'll see all the budget templates pop up. Some of them very simple, some a little bit more complex. And you can choose the one that you like. I don't know, maybe I'll open this one. Once you click on a template, you just click on create and Excel will create a copy of the template for you. This is a basic budget template. It looks like the table is here, and then based on the table you have these charts that are dynamically generated from the data. So I will guess that if I change some of the values in the table that these charts will be updated. So let's change this quantity to 5 and you'll see that, yeah, the numbers changed in the charts, right? So if you're looking, maybe you want to have a budget in your project and you want to see how you can link charts dynamically to your table content, then you can take a look at this template. Interesting here is they have little bars within the cells. That's kind of cool. I've used that trick before too. Anyways, file, and I'll close this. I don't want to save it. And then I'll go to File New again. This time I'll just open a blank workbook. Now the first thing you can notice about Excel is that it looks like a big table. Maybe it looks like a database to you. Maybe if you're an accountant, you might call it a ledger. Or if you're in business, maybe you see that as a kind of a matrix. At any rate, it is just rows and columns, right? It is a grid. I like to call it a grid. A grid of rows and columns. Anytime a row and a column intersects, you have a cell. Each column is labeled with a letter. Each row is labeled with a number. And this is what makes Excel very powerful, because you know the address of each cell in the grid automatically, because you know the letter of the column and the number of the row. You can also see it right here up in the top left corner. This is cell C16, column C, row 16, right? I can select any cell in the table and just start typing. Right? Type any word I want. You'll see that the word shows up on the screen in the cell, but also you'll see that it's up here in the formula bar. Right? I can edit directly in the cell itself. Double click and I get in the cell. Inventory of cookies. I don't know. Right? Or I can edit in the formula bar as well. Up here. So as I change in the formula bar, you'll see it's changing in the cell. Now, like Microsoft Word, if you've used Word before, it has the same exact formatting options as Word. If you use Word, you'll probably be pretty comfortable in Excel. So for the contents of the cell, I can change the font underneath the font section of the ribbon for the Home tab. These are the tabs. This is the ribbon for each tab, and each tab is divided into sections. Right? This is cut and paste, your clipboard section, your font section, alignment, number, just like Microsoft Word. If you don't see an option that you need, for example, let's say in the font, you need more options, you can click this little icon right here and you'll get the full dialog. Alternatively, you can right-click the cell and you can click on Format Cell, and you'll also get the same dialog, which gives you more options for alignment and font and all this stuff, right? So I can change the font, choose a different font. I can change the size of the font, and you'll notice that the height of the row is automatically adjusting to the size of the content of the cell. I can make this bold. I can make it underlined. I can change the background color of the cell. I can change the color of the font, right? All the formatting options. Now you'll see that as I made the font bigger, that the row height became larger. The way I can adjust the row height, the simplest way is simply to select the border between the rows. Between row 8 and 9, you'll see that my cursor will change to an X, and I can click and hold, and I can pull, drag, and make that row height taller. I can do the same thing in the column. I can make the column wider by just dragging, right? Just like that. I can also right-click where the letter is or right-click where the number is. If I right-click, I can change the column width, right? Type in a number, make it a little wider. Right-click in the row, header, row height, make this a little bit taller, right? Within the cell, besides changing the characteristics of the content of the cell, I can change the alignment. Right now it's aligned to the bottom of the cell. I can make it to the center or to the top. I can align it left, which it does by default, center or right. I can add indents. I can even align the text. I can even rotate the text. For example, I can turn the text this way if I wanted to. Right? Now you'll see that my content of my cell fits within the cell right now because I made the column wider. Let's say if I make it short again, you'll see that the contents kind of overlaps into the cell on the left and the right because it's aligned center. If I align it left, it's going to just overlap to the right. Right? Let's say I want to keep all of my cells, sort of shorter size, but I don't want the content of my cell to be going over to the next one. So I can click on that cell and I can click on wrap text, and it's going to keep the text within the cell. Alternatively, if I don't like this, because I don't like my words being broken into pieces like that, I can actually combine cells together. I can combine these 3 cells together into one cell by clicking merge and center. Right? So now that's one cell. Even though there's 3 cells above it and 3 cells below it, this is a combined merged cell into one cell. All right, so the next thing about Excel that I should tell you about is what is a range? A range is any group of cells. So this is a range, right? This is a range. This is a range. Any group of cells that I highlight is a range. Any group of cells. Okay. And that's important. I will show you why that's important here in just a second. For now, let me delete this row. I don't want this content here. So I can right-click in the title bar of the row where it says 8 and just delete that row. Get everything back to normal, back to the beginning. So let's show you how you use a range in Excel, why ranges are important. To do this, I'm going to just create a table. I'm thinking about building a new computer, and so I want to build a table of computer parts. Because I want to know how much my new computer is going to cost me. And for the first column, I want to identify the different items included in a computer build. And those would include, the CPU, the motherboard the CPU goes in, case the motherboard and the CPU are installed in. You need a power supply for that. We also need RAM memory to set up our computer, and we need a hard drive. I think that's all, right? Case, motherboard, RAM, hard drive, that's everything. You'll see that this word motherboard kind of is overlapping into the next column. If I type something here in the next column, it's going to cut that off, right? So I'll be able to see the whole word. I could tell it to wrap, but then it kind of breaks the word in half and it looks strange. I don't like it. So what I need to do is I need to make this column wider, and I'll just grab and drag, make it wider, so that all the items, all the text fits. Now for my next column, I want the actual component that I want to buy. These are just categories. Maybe I'll change that. I call this the category, and I'll say this is the actual item I'm going to buy for my computer. For my CPU, I want to have an i7 9700K. I think that's one of the best CPUs out right now. For the motherboard, I like a ASUS motherboard. I don't remember the name of the chipset for the i7, but I'll just leave it there. The case, I like these NZXT cases. Power supply, maybe EVGA power supply. RAM, you can use just about any RAM. Let's say, I think Corsair is a common brand, or actually I think Crucial. Crucial is a common brand. They're from my hometown, so I'm going to put them in there. And HD-wise, everybody likes a good Samsung Evo SSD, right? So once again, I see that this last item is fairly long for this column. So I want to make this column wider, but I like things to be uniform. So I know this column is not as wide as this column, but I like everything to be the same. So I'm going to highlight both of these columns and the next one. Right click, so I have highlighted a range here, a range of columns. And I'm going to click column width. And I'm going to set this manually so they all have the same column width. 35, that's a little too much, too wide. So let me try 20. That looks good, right? So now all three of these columns are the same width, uniform. And my next column is going to be the price. I know an i7 is around $400 these days, a little bit less maybe. Motherboard, you can get a motherboard anywhere from $200 to $700, but usually $200 is a good entry-level motherboard. NTX case is about $80. NZXT case, $80. Power supply, say $120. RAM, I want 8 gigabyte to 4 gigabyte chips. I would say $80 each, say $160 total. Let's just say $80 each. And then SSD, about $190 for each one for the Evo. And then, for the RAM, we can specify here that this is a 4 gigabyte Crucial RAM. And let's say this is a 512 megabyte SSD. I don't need to say that, but I'll just know that. But for my system, I want to have 2 of these. Next column is the number. I want to have 2 of the SSDs. I need to have 8 gigabyte of RAM in my system, so I want to have 2 of these. Right? I'll need 1 power supply, 1 case, 1 motherboard, 1 CPU. Now, because I have multiples of some of these items, I need to have a total column. Right? And once again, column width, I set this at 20, so I'm going to set these 2 columns also at 20. So, and I also think this is a little bit crowded here. There's no space between the rows. A little bit difficult for me to read, so I am going to go ahead and increase the row height as well. Let's increase that to 25 just to make it a little bit easier to read. And I don't like how my items are aligned to the bottom of each cell. I'd rather they be aligned to the center of each cell, so I'm going to do that. Right? That's good. I want my title to be bold, and I want the font to be larger so I know what this spreadsheet is about. I want it to be centered too across all the columns, so I'm going to highlight these cells and I'm going to merge them. So now my title is bold and large across the top. Excuse me. You also notice that Excel automatically formats numbers to the right and text to the left. That's the general, accounting principle. So any number that you type into Excel, it's going to treat it as a number. Any text you type into Excel is going to treat it as text. Any combination of numbers and text will be treated as text as well. All right. So this is where the range comes in. Actually, not the range. Sorry, I just want to do a simple calculation here to total the amount of money it will cost me for each item. So what I do to enter a formula, the first step is to use the equal sign. You see up in the formula bar, there's the equals, right? This tells Excel that I'm typing a formula. But don't put equals first, and it just thinks I'm typing text or a number. So equals, right? And I simply want to multiply the price times the number. So I am going to click on the price, and see it inserts C4 there, because that's cell C4, times the number, right? And then click enter, and the total is 400. If I click in the, if you see it's displaying the number 400 for me, but it's actually a formula that's calculated that number. That's why we have a separate formula bar so that we can see our formulas in the cell. Right? We see the output of the formula, and we see the formula here. By clicking the formula bar and clicking in my formula there, it actually highlights the two cells that are in the formula, red and blue. Blue is C4, red is D4. Right? Now I could do it again. Equals this cell plus that cell. I could do that for each one, and that would take a little bit of time. But there's a shortcut. One shortcut is simply to copy, Control C, the above formula, and go to the next one and paste it. You'll see that Excel has automatically changed the row 4 to row 5 for me. It automatically does that for me, right? So this is, the original formula was C4 and D4, and when I pasted it, it changed to C5 and D5. So if I were to take this formula and copy it and paste it down here, it would change it, the row numbers to 23 and 23, right? Excel is smart that way. Now there's even a quicker way that I could do this. I mean, I could continue to copy and paste, right? I wonder what happens if I just copy a range. Oops, if I copy here and then highlight the whole range. Paste. Sorry, copy and paste, right? It's done each one. So I can do more than one cell at a time. I'll show you again, right? I copy this first formula, then I highlight the range of the next cells, and I paste. And now it's filled in the formula for each cell and changed the row in each one for me. That saves me a lot of time than having to retype the formula over and over again. However, there's even a quick way, which is the way that most people do it, is they simply click on the formula cell, and right in the bottom right corner of that cell, there's a little square. And when you highlight over it, your cursor turns to an X. You can just click and hold and just drag it down. And it fills it in for you. Right? I'll show you that again. Highlight the cell, grab the corner, and drag. And you'll see it has created the formulas for me based on the first cell. Now I need to know the total cost of my system, so I'm going to put a total, say this is my total row, the bottom. And my row height isn't right, so I'm going to change my row height. It was 20, so it matches the rest of my table. I can't total this column or this one because this is the price, but it's not supposed to be total because you don't know the number. And the reason I total the numbers, so I just need to total the final cell here. And to do this, I need to know a range, right? earlier you might say that this is the earlier formula. I'm just doing a calculation of multiplying two cells together. It's not really a range. What I want to do here is add a range of cells. I want to add together this range right here. So I simply click in the cell below these values. And up here in the right corner under editing, there is this little kind of looks like an E, but it actually it's a symbol for sum. You click auto sum, and it automatically highlights all the values above it, and it inserts the range E4 to E9. Now I could do this manually. I could type equals sum, and you see as I type the formula, it gives me the options of all the possible formulas that start with the letters SUM. There's the basic sum, sum if s, all these different options, right? And it also gives me some indication of, if I click here, of the syntax for that formula. So sum, it tells me needs parentheses and it needs the numbers inside the parentheses. So I can do individual numbers, like I could say E3, sum E3 and separate it and add E4 and add E5 and add E6. Right, you can see how the colors are increasing. So I could do that manually like that. I could add each cell separately, or I can just use colon and put E3 as the, actually it's not E3, sorry, it's E4. And the last one is E9, and that's my range, right? Hit enter, and it sums all those values together. But like I said, the quick way is just highlight the cell, click on auto sum, it automatically highlights the range for you, hit enter, and you have a total. Now, I know that these values are actually currency. And so you'll see up here in the ribbon, there is a number section where you can change the format of the cell. Right now, the format is set to general. See, it's set to general. And I can change it to just currency or a number or a date or a time, percentage. See, if I click on percentage, it thinks that's a percentage, right? I can change it to just a general number with decimal points. But we know this is a currency, so I'm going to change it to dollars. When you add the currency, it automatically puts in these zeros, right? But I know all my numbers are already rounded, so I'm going to take off the zeros here by clicking these two buttons. You can add zeros and take off zeros. And I'll do the same thing over here for this column of currency values. Take off the zeros. So now I see, based on my choices, that my new computer system is going to cost about $1,340. Right? You'll see where there's a number 2 here. It doubles the 190, right? So not bad. Not bad at all. I hope I'm not missing anything here. I probably am missing something. Now, that's all right, but I like my tables to look good. So what I like to do is I like to bold the top column header, right? Bold that. I want to insert a line below the column header. So right here, this icon under font, it gives you different choices for inserting lines. If these are shortcuts, but if there's something in particular that's not here, you can click on more borders and get all the options for making borders. But luckily the one I want is the very first one, bottom border. So I put a little line in there. And then I also want to have a line above the total, but I want this line to be a, actually let's go ahead and highlight the total row and then do a single line on top and a double line below, right, like that. That's usually how you'll see an accounting kind of table formatted, with the double line below the total and a line above the total, a line below the column headers. Generally, that's how you see it. That's a nice, clean, simple table. One thing you'll find, though, is that it's helpful is that Excel has built-in formats. So if I highlight this range, which is my whole table, I can click right here underneath the Styles tab, and it gives me all these different options for formatting, different color themes and different ways of formatting a table. I could just pick one, let's say that one, and it confirms the range of my table for me. And I also confirm that my table has headers, which it does, and I click OK. And there I got a nice orange table. And it even allows, even inserts these drop downs which allow me to filter the contents of my table, which we'll cover filtering later. I think that's a little bit too bright for me, so let's pick a different format. I am like just basic gray table. So alternating gray rows works well for me. I think too many colors is a bit distracting. I like to bold my total column as well. So bold that. There you go. That's first table. So in the next video, I will cover the 3 examples given in the Winston textbook, which he gives us 3 Excel sheets to play around with. Then after that, I will give you some shortcuts in Excel, some tips and tricks for doing your work in Excel. So see you next time.